Well, thank you all for coming. My name is Chris Berger, and I chair the Binghamton Regional Sustainability Coalition. And I also sit on the board for the Center of Civic Engagement here at Broome Community College. Both organizations are sponsoring this event this evening. We've gathered experts, activists, policymakers from across the state, all focused on the issue of sustainability. Hopefully, when you leave tomorrow, you will leave with a greater understanding of what sustainability is all about, and perhaps catch a glimpse of what a sustainable community might look like. You know, unfortunately, many practices we engage in today endanger the prospects of a strong and healthy tomorrow. We have been living under three false and very dangerous illusions. One illusion being that the biosphere, the air, the land, the water, is capable of endless absorption of poisonous wastes without itself being poisoned, and in turn poisoning the creatures that depend on it, we humans being part of that. The second illusion is that we somehow think that the natural resources necessary for our material well-being are essentially infinite. The third illusion is that we somehow think that we can tolerate an ever-growing gap between the rich and the poor without undermining our democracy and our democratic principles. We believe people are beginning to understand this fallacy, the fallacy of these assumptions. People are finally getting it. We believe people and businesses alike are looking for ways of becoming less wasteful, more efficient, and more just in how we live and how we do business. As a community, it will be important that we pull together in order to make these choices easier and more natural. We need to be retrofitting and building new homes and businesses that are less wasteful, more energy efficient, while relying less on fossil fuels. We need to be designing our transportation systems to be less wasteful, more efficient as well, and once again, relying on less fossil fuels. In addition, we need to break the pattern of utilizing our natural resources in this linear fashion we've become accustomed to, this extraction, use, and dispose mode. We need to increase our efforts to close resource loops and again become less wasteful and more efficient in our use of these limited, finite resources. I think you're beginning to sense the pattern here. The Saturday morning sessions of this conference will be focusing on just such topics. It is our belief that if we pay attention and concentrate on such things, we will in turn live healthier and more productive lives. We will in the process create new jobs, so-called green jobs. And if we do it right, our economy will become more just, a more just economy, and begin to address the growing inequities, the growing gap between the rich and the poor. These are the divisions that keep us apart and keep us from working together for the common good. It is these topics that our Saturday afternoon sessions will be addressing. Most importantly, we will be exploring ways to engage our citizenry in this important endeavor. Creating a sustainable community doesn't and won't just happen. It will take a concerted effort by all involved, pulling in the same direction, working together. We hope and believe that this conference will play an important part in this effort. So starting this evening, we are fortunate to have two community leaders who have thought a great deal about sustainability. But not only have they been thinking about it, they have been doing something about it. Now, before I introduce our Assemblywoman this evening, because she will be introducing our keynote, Gay Nicholson, I did want to say just a little bit about Gay while I had the podium. I've known Gay for a good many years. We served back in the 1980s in the Cornell think tank called the Eco-Justice Project. While other elements of the environmental movement ignored social justice issues, the Eco-Justice Project was one of the few voices making the link between ecological justice and economic justice, and tying these all into the issue of sustainability. All of which to say, this is to say that she's been working on these issues for a good long time. And I'm very delighted that she's been able to join us this evening. And now I'd like to introduce Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo. Donna served in the Broome County Legislature from 1999 to 2000. I had the distinct honor and pleasure of serving with her on the legislature at the time. You could say we were partners in crime. Donna, of course, went on to run for the 126th Assembly seat. Elected in 2004, she was the first woman to represent Broome County in the state legislature. As an Assembly member, she serves on committees covering election law, environmental conservation, higher education, libraries and education, technology, mental health, and transportation. Donna has been a vocal advocate for economic revitalization of upstate New York and has distinguished herself as an independent, reform-minded legislator. She has successfully passed legislation that protects the environment, reduces our dependence on foreign oil, and reforms the way state resources are allocated. I know Donna to be a lifelong environmentalist, long before it became trendy. She and I served together on the Broome County Environmental Management Council many, many years ago. We also worked together to form the Earth Day Southern Tier Board, which in turn developed this area's Earth Fest, one of the longest running fests of its kind in the country. In fact, we have her serving as honorary chair this year of Earth Fest, celebrating 20 years of operation and recognizing Donna's role in the formation of it. But just as I said in my remarks about Gay, Donna also has embedded in her heart a concern for social justice. Going back just as many years, Donna and I worked together through such agencies as Citizen Action, addressing social issues. No one needed to explain to her the connections between ecological justice and economic justice. She gets it. So it is with great pleasure I introduce to you a great Assemblywoman, a great community leader, and a great friend, Assemblywoman Donna Lupardo.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's always a pleasure to be in your company. You certainly have been a role model to many of us on the zero waste front. And it's always a pleasure to be with Gay Nicholson, who is, for me, certainly a role model, as for many of you, on all ways of helping our communities become more sustainable. I wanted to just say just a few words. I think, Chris, you're okay with me just waxing on for a few moments before we go to this. One of the things that I have been honored to be a part of is a series of meetings. One was a Green Economy Summit that I put together last year, bringing together elements from across the community, elements that aren't necessarily used to convening and meeting with one another. Because of my background in academia, I always am naturally drawn toward bringing people together to find like interests. And when you put together farmers and people in higher education and in local business and government, food systems, and all across the spectrum, you see a very strong theme that runs through our community. We are already an emerging and viable and vibrant green economy. We haven't quite put together all the marketing strategies that would go with that. But when you look at all of the various components that we have, we are doing pretty well, all in all. And Gay came down to our first meeting to provide us with some advice on how to do this, and also to share some success stories from Tompkins County, which were received very well. Recently, I held another green briefing on the whole green collar job idea. We want to make sure that our local individuals, especially those who have lost their jobs, are in a position to receive training, or for those who want to get into new careers, that they can take advantage of the stimulus money that is coming our way for green collar job development. The exciting thing for many of us about green jobs is that they can't be outsourced. They can't happen in another country. They have to happen here. They have to happen in our homes, in our businesses, on our roofs, in our HVAC systems, in our gardens, in our farms. It has to occur here. So in that respect, it will help people put people back to earth and perhaps get us on this sustainable course. To that end, this word, sustainability, has been floating out there quite a lot lately. And you know that I know that the word is starting to catch on because people are coming at me with the word out of context, out of the context that I'm used to hearing it. I'm used to hearing it with all of you. Now I'm getting calls that sound something like this. Hello? That budget that you passed, is that sustainable? Oh, and they're using the word just like that. And where did they hear that word? We have been successful, all of us, in putting that out there. Will this be sustainable? Is this practice sustainable? Can we continue to draw oil this way? Is it sustainable to put this much pollution into the atmosphere? Sustainable, sustainable, and now they're coming back at me with it. Is this budget sustainable? Congratulations to everyone for being successful with that word. But I go on to the website, yahoo.com, I figure, all right, let's see what's being said out there on this sustainability. I type in sustainability. I come to the very first hit, as it were, is www.willyoujoinus.com. When I typed in sustainability, I get the first hit goes to Chevron. Chevron is talking about their commitment to the global world and to a sustainable future. The second hit, believe it or not, was Walmart. Walmart.com advertising Nature's Source natural cleaners. Now you know you're onto something when it starts to get co-opted by these interests, all right? Look what they did to organic and what they did to low fat and so many of these other things. But be warned, once it starts to get creeping into this common parlance and people are talking about it, about the budget, and they're talking about it like this, we have to be very careful. We have to set the agenda. We have to set the stage. We have to own the true meaning of this idea. So where do I go when I try to get the true meaning of ideas? Well, where else but to Wikipedia? So I thought you might like to know what Wikipedia has to say about sustainability, because clearly it's not a Walmart cleaner nor a Chevron corporate philosophy. All right, so in brief, Wikipedia goes on and on, over 21 pages, discussing the history of human beings on the planet, all the way through contemporary terms. So anyway, they write, for humans to live sustainably, the Earth's resources must be used at a rate at which they can be replenished. Now, that's a simple enough idea. However, there is now clear scientific evidence that humanity is living unsustainably, and that an unprecedented collective effort is needed to return human use of natural resources to within sustainable limits. Now, they go on to define this in such a way that I'm sure you will find extremely interesting. It says the definition of sustainability that they are comfortable with: to meet the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. Okay, but you'll love this next part, I do. It says, although the definition of sustainable development given by this commission is frequently quoted, it is not universally accepted and has undergone various interpretations. Definitions of sustainability may be expressed as statements of fact, intent, or value, with sustainability treated as either a journey or a destination. Where we are now, where we need to be going, and how we are going to get there are all open to interpretation and will depend on the particular context under consideration. This thing is very, very, very complicated. There are a lot of strands, and I would highly advise for us to come together as a community and as a group and settle on how we're going to be talking about this, as I see the strands of it going out into the world and getting confused and getting co-opted. There are a few things that I think we should be focused on, and it's also coming from this Wikipedia. It talks about global goals. And I think it echoes some of the things that you said, Chris. Intergenerational equity, a global goal, providing future generations with the same environmental potential as presently exists. Decoupling economic growth from environmental degradation. Integration of environmental, social, and economic sectors when developing sustainable policies, and that's the importance of having all the people in the room, not just the environmentalists, but the economic development policymakers and the social policymakers as well, all on the same page, all using the same language, all agreeing to similar goals and objectives, and a way to market our community around these things. It's very important. Ensuring environmental adaptability and resilience, preventing irreversible long-term damage to ecosystems, accepting global responsibility, and promoting grassroots involvement. And we've been very good at the grassroots involvement over the years. I think we've been extremely successful. Perhaps not nearly as successful in integrating the policymakers into the conversation, which is why many of you know I took the leap over into that realm, the other side, as it were. And I'm living to talk about it, barely. One quick item for your reference. We'll be talking about this more tomorrow. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill. It's already passed in the Assembly. It creates a Sustainable Development Task Force. We're trying, for New York State, we're trying to bring some reason and rational thinking into the way the state approaches many of its systems. Right now, we're all over the map. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. We need help getting this bill through the state Senate. So with that in mind, let's introduce Gay Nicholson. A little background on Gay. She was the executive director of the Finger Lakes Land Trust from 1995 to 2002. She was a consultant with the Land Trust in 2002, regional coordinator of Southern Tier Energy Smart Communities, 05 to 08, and from 2003 to the present, the program coordinator for Sustainable Tompkins. And let me tell you a little bit more about her in detail. Since 03, she has led Sustainable Tompkins, a fabulous role model, honestly, for all of us. I'm sure you will be as impressed as I am. She has designed and implemented an integrated program to advance the creation of a more sustainable regional community. As program coordinator, Gay emphasizes a systems approach to working with partners to build the infrastructure and social capacity for more sustainable ways of living and working. Projects and programs have focused on energy efficiency, green purchasing, sustainable community development, green jobs, sustainable enterprise, greening healthcare, and economic/ecological justice. She was instrumental in the founding and development of the Green Resource Hub of the Finger Lakes, an affiliate of Sustainable Tompkins, which focuses on consumer education and business support services in the areas of green building, renewable energy, green purchasing, and energy efficiency. This is all true, yes? It's a lot, that's good. Gay has previously worked in the fields of energy efficiency and renewable energy, sustainable agriculture, global warming, environmental ethics, land use planning, and land conservation. And she's been an active volunteer in numerous community and environmental organizations, providing leadership from the local to the national level. She's going to help us understand what a sustainable community might look like and provide some real-world examples of what has been happening under her leadership in Tompkins County. I'm very proud to introduce you, Gay Nicholson.
Really pleased to hear about this conference and totally honored to be asked to come and meet with you. I just, a little disclaimer, I'm not a sustainability guru, just a citizen that has been concerned and involved for a number of years now.
She's also modest.
But really, we're all, you know, we are citizens, we're empowered to do something about what we're facing. And I'm going to hit this little key and hope for the best and hope everything's in business here. Ah, yes, good. So sustainability is, as Donna said, quite the buzzword these days. And, you know, when we are coming together to work on this, we should stop and say, well, why? What is motivating us? And I think that really for a lot of us, the entry point is that we don't like the trends. Peak oil, climate change, toxic body burdens, the rest of it. I'm not going to say anything more about those trends because you're all well aware of them. But that definitely is what has raised our level of concern. If everything was fine, we wouldn't be so worried about making some changes. But that said, we also are beckoned by our awareness of our own human potential, that another world is possible. And you know, besides having our concern about the trends, we also are attracted to by our ideals around building a more humane and just and healthy way of living together. This is just one of the many definitions of sustainability. I think it's important to note that sustainability isn't really achieved by just having everything going fine for the human beings on the planet. It's about all of the other species being maintained and sustained for their natural days, the trajectory of their own evolutionary paths. So I wanted to start by giving a brief tour of the local sustainability landscape up in the Ithaca and Tompkins County area, because it's just a way of sharing how people are working on making this other world possible. I'm going to be going kind of rapidly, so I just wanted to let you know that if there is something that you're intrigued by that you'd like to learn about, we created this sustainability map that is on the Sustainable Tompkins website, just sustainabletompkins.org. And it's an interactive map that has all these different programs and organizations and initiatives categorized into the different categories that you see on the side. So you can go and find out who are all the groups working on democracy and justice, or energy efficiency, or sustainable transportation. So just to know that that's a resource that you can turn to. But let's start with the energy. It is one that every community is paying attention to, especially with last year's prices, the reality of climate change, the eventual impacts of peak oil, and the federal stimulus dollars that are being spent these days in the energy sector. I think it's important to make sure that a community is working at all scales, and what's great about what's happening in Tompkins County is that you have the large institutional players like all three campuses for higher ed making commitments to zero carbon, as well as the city of Ithaca and Tompkins County and some of the towns setting some goals for reducing their carbon emissions, reducing their energy consumption. But it's very important that not just those large-scale commitments be made, but also that you're paying attention to how are you helping the homeowners and low-income folks reduce their energy demand so that they're not as vulnerable. So we have a number of programs that are going on to help individual citizens as well. I have to throw this slide on. This is NYSERDA's map of New York State showing the number of kilowatts of installed solar photovoltaics. And there's that supernova over 14850, which is Ithaca's zip code. You know, so even though we're a small city, we are the #1 in the state because of great interest. And in hopefully a few more weeks, that little dot that's within it, that's the town of Lansing where I live, will get bigger because I just got 3.2 kilowatts installed for my house and hopefully an electric car someday. So I'm really excited about that. Food security is another huge area of interest for any community, right up there with energy security. And in the Ithaca area, it's our oldest institutions around sustainable living are related to food. The Moosewood Restaurant, the Green Star Cooperative, and the Ithaca Farmers Market, which is one of the best in the state. But there are also, you know, initiatives going on around local food production and processing, and learning how to grow your own and process your own is also just taking off like wildfire. Our cooperative extension office is responsible for most of how fast this is growing. Not only have they helped like the Ithaca Farmers Market get established and connected restaurants with organic growers, but they are also really working on food justice issues. They've put together like a low-income CSA, community-supported agriculture, and combine that with nutrition and cooking classes. So they're trying to take a very holistic approach, and it's impressive what the team at Extension's been doing. Shelter is another basic requirement, and we've been lucky to have a trade association called the Ithaca Green Building Alliance, which has been working for many years together. They offer annual educational programs to teach people about green building, as well as they organize and host the fall green building tour, which has become so popular it's had to go to 2 days, Saturday and Sunday, first weekend in October. There's a lot to look at, and a lot of people driving in from other states to look at all of these buildings, from the residential to that's a drawing of the new business school at Ithaca College, which achieved platinum LEED ratings. It's the highest scale for highest rating for a green building. Transportation is another basic area to be concerned about, and there's been quite a bit of work on trying to green up our current modality of cars and buses by having them be hybrids or use biofuels to run them. But there's also initiatives around creating multi-use trails so that people have other options to get around. And fairly exciting is an initiative that's being run by Connect Ithaca, a little group that is looking at, can we bring what are called POG cars to Ithaca? That's personal rapid transit systems, which run on electricity and move people around on demand in high-density areas. And that could be a very exciting new mobility method. Resource use. Chris is an expert in this, of how to reduce your resource consumption. A lot has been going on in the Tompkins County area, and I have to give a lot of the credit to our county solid waste management division. They not only put together a very successful curbside recycling program and hazardous waste handling, but they've been very innovative at providing seed money to get all sorts of other parts of the waste stream under control. They've helped finance Cooperative Extension's master composting program, and it's just amazing how many people compost at home in the city. as well as all the restaurants and the dining halls on the campuses. They have helped establish Finger Lakes Reuse Center so that used furniture doesn't go into the landfill, it gets resold, and buildings, when they need to be demolished, instead of just that going to the landfill, that's deconstructed and salvaged and resold. So the waste stream keeps shrinking as we become more responsible about how we're consuming things. Meant to mention Finger Lakes by Green. That was one of our projects with solid waste. It's a website that allows you to find where in Tompkins County, which stores can you go to and buy green office supplies, cleaning supplies, yard and garden, home repair and maintenance. It teaches about what those options are, so that a lot of people want to start buying more responsibly, but they're not quite sure what they should be buying, where can they get it, and so this is a resource that's maintained by the Solid Waste Management Division. Sustainable enterprise is a really exciting area that's taking off. Chris mentioned, or Donna mentioned, the Green Resource Hub of the Finger Lakes, which was one of our working groups and has become a nonprofit and is affiliated with Sustainable Tompkins, and I've been helping them get up and running. We've done a lot of consumer education, but now we're starting to offer a platform for local businesses to come together and network and do some shared marketing, maybe offer some support services for going green. It's wonderful how many businesses are just across the whole spectrum are coming in and thriving in the Tompkins County marketplace that are offering some kind of green product or service in the retail sector or even in the manufacturing sector. Comet Skateboards is making the world's first totally compostable skateboard out of technology developed at Cornell. Planning is really at the heart of this work to transition to a more sustainable community, and it's so important that citizens get engaged at all the different levels of planning and make sure that planning departments are thinking creatively and proactively about the redesign effort that we need to do. We've been very fortunate in Tompkins County to have really some pretty good leadership for these different planning initiatives, but citizens are able to do planning as well. At the bottom here are some of the local citizen groups. Prepared Tompkins helps people plan at the household level for their own survivability and sustainability in terms of teaching people what do you need to put up in terms of your own water supply, your own food supply, for how many people. It's a real hands-on practical website that's available. And TC Local is a relocalization think tank that's writing papers on different topic areas that would provide the groundwork for coping with sudden disruptions, especially due to price spikes in energy, of how that would domino through the economy and through our way of life, and how would one go about coping with that. Land use, the county and Tompkins County Planning Department has done a great job at identifying important farmland to protect, as well as unique natural areas, and what natural resources do we want to guide development around. But again, citizens are also involved in this. The Finger Lakes Land Trust, for example, is extremely active in protecting key watersheds and natural areas as well as farmland. And community development is so very much at the heart of this work of redesigning how we work and live to become more sustainable. And I couldn't even begin to list all the things that are going on in that realm in our community. And it's interesting, the conversation that's going on about social justice and sustainability, and sometimes it's a rough conversation to be in, and yet it's so necessary for us to have that dialogue and figure out where our biases lie and our mental frameworks, how they are not necessarily in opposition, but they just require some integration, because you typically have a lot of people who have an environmental background getting involved in these things, and then the people who have been working on social justice are feeling, well, we've been doing this all along too, so let's have a conversation about this and see where we can partner up. So I'm very grateful for that dialogue that is underway in our community. Education, all through the Southern Tier, education is a big part of our economy. And from the K through 12 level up to the universities, it's important that this conversation around sustainability be happening. And all three of our higher ed campuses are engaged, as well as the local schools. And we even have a new charter school starting up called New Roots, and its whole purpose will be around the topic of sustainability education. It's amazing, this topic of events. In the last 5 years, it's just mushroomed how many community events are held around the theme of sustainability. They're just going around all year long, that there are these gatherings, these opportunities for green businesses to show their products and services, and for the groups to educate on particular topic areas. This is a picture of friends of mine who created the Sew Green Collective. This is teaching people how to sew. It's part of the reskilling that we need to do, but on a basis of refashioning clothing. So, and teaching people about the impacts of the fashion industry on our environment and on the lives of other people. So, over the last few years, as I've watched all of these groups get going on all these different topic areas, it's like this emerging landscape full of buds and new ways of thinking and doing. And like any social ecological system, given time, it will evolve organically and create new types of relationships, new flows of information and resources. But I have worried that it won't evolve fast enough, given the trajectories that we face. And so the question becomes, well, can we co-create? Can we consciously evolve the system? Can we work together and be wise enough to push the evolution of this ecology of sustainability? And wisdom is a real challenge here, I think, because it is so complex. It's easy to make mistakes in what we're doing. So maybe one of the first things that your group might want to have a conversation about is if you're going to be trying to put a sustainable community program together, well, what are the critical things that you should be looking at? Most of us would maybe start with the human basics of energy and shelter and food, but we must, from the beginning, be paying attention to other things like health and justice. You can't sort of tack those things on necessarily after the fact. And most communities are so focused on food and energy security because they feel so, we feel so threatened by some of those trends. But we know we're not going to get there if we don't stop and make sure we're looking at all of the elements that are critical. Well, we've been trying to take what I call a four-way strategy in this work. We know from the social change literature that the most rapid change in an organization or in a community comes when you combine a top-down and bottom-up strategy. You need informed and effective leadership, but you've got to have grassroots engagement. Either by itself goes way too slow. So you have to be designing for making sure you're reaching out to your elected officials as well as all parts of your community. Another aspect there is building awareness. For a lot of people, you have to start with explaining and exploring some of the issues that we're facing. So you have to build awareness around issues and awareness about the options. But you better, if you're going to be waking people up to this, you better be building some infrastructure for them to plug in and some way to go and learn about how to do things differently. And for example, that Finger Lakes by Green website is an example of some infrastructure to help people once they realize, oh, I want to buy different. Well, how do I do that? Another thing to think about as you're reaching out to other parts of your community is that there's sort of a progression that people go through, and people enter at different stages into that progression. There's a learning stage at the heart of it, where the purpose is creating awareness and knowledge around issues. And then you get to a place where you're visioning and making some plans. And then finally to the part of developing and implementing, and then actually having that infrastructure to model for others, to adopt and to model. So just be aware of that progression that has to be continuously pushed along. As he was saying about Sustainable Tompkins, we got started back in 2004, and we have been basically, that's our mission statement of pursuing the triple bottom line of community well-being, economic vitality, and ecological stewardship. But we've added on this other dimension of civic and personal responsibility. That we don't think you get that triple bottom line without really emphasizing the responsibility piece. That's what our little logo is all about, the triple bottom line in the field of responsibility. Our work has been in these three areas of being a connector, a convener, and a catalyst, and I'll just run quickly through some of what we've been doing as things that you might want to think about for your organization. It's, the first and easy thing to do is just simply be a connector of people. We have a listserv and a website. We manage a weekly column in Tompkins Weekly. It's called Signs of Sustainability, where different organizations are writing about their work every week. We have that map I told you about so people can find each other. And we have started and we do the support of the Cayuga Sustainability Council, which is where all of the nonprofits meet on a quarterly basis, come together, network, update each other, stay tuned in to what people are working on. Then we spend usually some time also delving deeper into some topic like the economy. The Sustainable Enterprise Network is another one that is a way of connecting people. And I just want to say that connecting is maybe more important than we think. When people are well networked, there's a greater social capacity in your community, and that actually creates some strength and resiliency in your community to cope with disruptions. As a convener, we've done a lot of work from small group gatherings, face-to-face, in-depth conversations and study circles and master classes, as well as offered workshops on how to give your business a sustainability makeover. And then we've held these large regional conferences on sustainable technology. We did one on health and sustainability, and last year we held the region's first Green Collar Career Fair for about 600 high school kids and college students. This year we're working on bringing Bioneers to Ithaca, and that will be our regional conference for this year. We are a small group with not a lot of resources, so one of our strategies has been to be a catalyst to pull people together, get things going, and spin it off. And one outcome has been this group of teachers who were in one of our study circles who have, for the last couple of years, been working together. They're from every district in the county, and it's great to see how they support each other and doing different sustainability endeavors in their school districts. More recently, these ones at the bottom that we're working on, we have a neighborhood mini grant program, and a council made up of members of some of the city neighborhoods, and these are $500 to $1,500 grants for community groups to come together and take on some little piece of like a community garden project or energy audits in a low-income housing complex. These are ways of just catalyzing more conversation and more change. The Finger Lakes Climate Fund is something we're starting to work on now. I don't know how many of you are familiar with carbon offsets. When people travel, you can offset the carbon emissions from your air travel or your drive across country. And we would like those dollars to stay locally rather than go to planting trees elsewhere. So especially since our campuses have made a commitment to reducing their emissions, we're trying to set up a way for those payments for carbon offsets to come into a fund, and then we can provide grants to lower modest income people to do energy efficiency retrofits of their homes, for example. So that's something that we hope will catalyze a lot of change. I mentioned collaborative efforts. As I said, we've got this council where the nonprofits come together. We have the Sustainable Enterprise Network for the businesses. There's something called the Tompkins County Climate Protection Initiative, where the institutional players and the governmental players come together, the ones that have been making these climate reduction commitments. And recently there's been an effort to create a Green Jobs Coalition, which will be an affiliate of the Powell Alliance, and it involves the unions and the Worker Center and workforce development agencies, as well as the educators, at BOCES and at the community college. Speaking of green jobs, I just wanted to spend a little bit of time on that because there is such a buzz around it, and right now for some communities it feels like a fire hose aimed at us in terms of the the funding that's coming along, and there's a real risk of not doing a very good job of spending those stimulus dollars if we're not thoughtful about where to place it and pay attention to the interacting elements. So this is just a representation of some of the things that we have to think about. If those we want green jobs, well, that means we need to have some green businesses where those people would work, and that means there needs to be market demand for the products and services that those businesses are offering. And it means that there has to be training and certification programs to train the people to do those particular jobs. So take a little closer look at some of those elements. In terms of green businesses, a lot of the focus is on the energy arena, renewable energy, energy efficiency. But as you work together in your community, we can be thinking of green businesses in a much broader way. All the food security related aspects is one, as well as the manufacture of green products and the retail of those products. So remember to just be thinking broadly about those options. I mentioned that you have to have some market demand for green products and services. There's been a lot that I would say much of the marketplace that exists has come about through consumer education. It's sort of, we call it the Swedish model of you change the marketplace by changing what people are asking for. And then businesses and contractors and others go and learn how to do that and provide that. So that's an important piece of it. It's also important to think about the money, and there are many different ways of providing financing, from direct capital investment in new manufacturing, new technology being developed, to tax credits, low interest loans. just to speak a little bit about policy, since we we have our representative here, there is a lot that can be done, I think, through policy, not just at the federal level or state level, but actually at the local level as well. And policy can be an instrument applied to almost every part of that green job system. Like in financing, one possibility would be to drive investment in some of those higher capital investments of solar systems and geothermal systems by offering a property tax rebate. We do that for conservation easements. Maybe we could do that for renewable energy systems to make sure we have more distributed energy. We definitely are influencing market demand quite a bit by setting policy. When governments say we're going to reduce carbon emissions by 80% by the year 2050, which is what Tompkins County has done, that creates demand for the products and services that would help us do that. So that's a very high leverage thing to do. We also need to be paying a lot of attention to policy and how it affects the training and education and workforce development programs that are out there. This could become quite a bottleneck if we don't pay attention to it, or some parts of the upstate are lagging behind others in terms of getting that infrastructure in place. So they can't produce the skilled workforce, and the overall system kind of breaks down. They can't participate in the marketplace. In Tompkins County, I've just indicated, I won't go into all the details, but there are a lot of people working on different pieces of this overall system. I'm getting a little nervous about the piece around market demand with the drop in fossil fuel prices. We're at risk of having that market shrink up, and then the green businesses who have expanded and hired these people who are coming through the pipeline getting trained, and then there's no business. That really can have a domino effect that we have to be trying to plan for. So, my colleagues often hear me talk about the need to take a systems approach to the redesign of how we work and live. And I think we all know that just a few tweaks of behavior or technology here and there, we know that that isn't going to allow us really to live comfortably and peacefully and enduringly. So it's so important that we develop a comprehensive understanding of how our current systems are designed, and with that understanding, maybe be able to identify the strategic points at which we might be able to intervene and change the trajectory of some of the trends that are so embedded in these unsustainable systems that we have. I don't know how many of you have heard of Donna Meadows. She was a brilliant scientist and great systems thinker, and she put together this list, a list of what she felt were the important things to pay attention to when either designing systems or trying to intervene in a system. And she felt that we spent 95% of our time at this level of just tweaking the numbers, like the tax rates, probably because it's one of the easiest things to do, but it's also what she felt was probably the most ineffective thing that we can do in terms of pushing a system. And she recognized that the greatest leverage that we can find is at the level of shifting the paradigm, the mindset, the worldview from which the system has evolved. If you can intervene at the level of the paradigm, then you can hit a leverage point that just totally transforms the system, to move it from one system to another system, if you can shift the paradigm. That's not easy, and it kind of explains why not much effort is made at that level. But we can, I think, take a little bit of comfort from Donnella's advice, as well as Thomas Kuhn's, that how do you go about doing it? Well, beginning by pointing out the flaws in the current system, and believe me, that's what we're all very engaged in. And I think a lot of people are aware that the current system is not sustainable, and we need to really work hard on coming up with a new one. This advocate for new paradigm is really where a lot of us are, trying to describe a different way of living together and working together. And a lot of us, I think a lot of time is spent on the hope for the technological fix, but I think our reality is going to be different than that, and that we're going to have to talk about what is the economy for, what makes us happy, how do people thrive, and get into some of those deeper philosophical discussions. Otherwise, it's so easy, as I said earlier, to make a mistake and to not be wise about just sort of changing out one technology for the new technology, only to discover a lot of problems down the road. You're probably already well aware of this third thing of, look for the change agents, look for the open-minded people, partner up with them. And that is also a way of bringing hope to yourself in this work, is to be with people of like mind. And this last bit, it's hard, but if we can put together at least small models of what this other paradigm would look like and share it with other people, even if it's just a piece of it, it lets people experience a different way. And we have to find ways of creating that in our own community. So it isn't something that, oh, that's just Eco-Village at Ithaca, far away, and we couldn't do that here. It's important to create at least little examples. I've mentioned resilience earlier. I've just started learning about this, and I would really recommend that those of you who are interested check out the Resilience Alliance. And there's a book called Resilience Thinking, and there's a lot of other literature out there. But I think we really have a lot to learn from this frame of reference. A lot of us think of resilience as being able to bounce back from some bad thing that happened. But at a system level, it's really the capacity to recover from disruption without basically changing all the basic structure and function of the system that you were in. It's like, can New Orleans come back to being New Orleans after the disruption of Hurricane Katrina? When we're thinking about this redesign effort, resiliency is a result of diversity, not only diversity of the kinds of businesses you have, but in how they respond to a disruption, as an example. And resilience is also influenced by distance from critical thresholds. That implies you need to know what the threshold is, what's the tipping point before you fall into a new system regime that you can't come back from. There's lots of ecological examples out there of how a fertile agricultural area becomes a desert and can't recover, for example. We know that how some areas tip into war and stay in war, stay constantly at each other's throats. There's lots of examples of thresholds that we have to figure out how close are we to them, how can we back away from those thresholds. But the encouraging thing to me is that as systems collapse, an opportunity emerges to consciously design, to intervene, to reorganize, reshape. And I feel like right now this is a great opportunity. As we're faced with this global economic downturn, this is really a great opportunity to engage people in that redesign process. So I keep talking about redesign. I've been curious about, well, what are the principles that we could use to guide us. I'm not a fan, really, of making a lot of detailed plans because those tend to get put on the shelf. I think it'd be better if we figured out what are the principles that should be guiding us, our checkpoints along the way. And I think every one of these principles is a good one, and it's useful. One of my favorites, though, is the number 5, the simple asking of the question, and then what? Peering around the corner, seeing what's next. A lot of our feedback loops have been amputated deliberately by us humans, or have just ended up being so far removed that the feedback loops are so loose we don't see them in time and space. We don't understand the consequences of our consumer goods here and how it's impacted the places where they were made or the places where the materials were extracted to make them, as an example. And the last one is an interesting one, I think, to keep in mind. I did a sustainable design workshop, and we spent all day on this topic and came up with, different principles. And it was so interesting to me when I looked at those and realized that they were all could just be distilled down into the word relationship. It's all about relationship. It's at the core of being, all this interconnection. And that, I think, if we could just carry that with us, when we look at any system, whether it's social relations, the ecological flows of cycles of our life support system on the planet, and how the economy works or doesn't work for various people. So how would we maybe go about applying some of this? This is just a illustration of what I call the wheel of community development. This is our typical pattern. Change happens, or we need a change, so we get some people together and we vision, some kind of an answer, and so then we make a plan and we get organized and then we do it, implement the plan, and then maybe we might evaluate the results, and then we wait until another change happens and we go around the wheel again. And our pattern has been to do this in a totally piecemeal fashion. It's like, we need some more jobs. Can we recruit a factory to town? Workers need more housing. Well, maybe we'll allow some residential development to go on the edge of town. We'll get some, end up getting some sprawl. And now we need to widen the roads because the roads are congested. That's the piecemeal thing that we've been doing for years, and we're living with those results. So the question becomes then, well, if you were to do that through the lens of sustainability, with an awareness of things like climate change and peak oil and some of those other trends that we're trying to get away from, how would you now go around that wheel? Well, the first thing might be that you increase your level of participation. Participatory democracy is really at the heart, I think, of sustainability. So more people thinking about the outcomes. And this time when you're coming up with some plans, maybe you think about creating green jobs and the infrastructure that would support that. Maybe you work on deciding to shift those development codes so that high-density mixed-use development is even possible in your municipality instead of being illegal. And maybe you start to think about, well, how would people be moving around in our city in the future? And hopefully, if there is an ability to really integrate some of this thinking and planning, perhaps you can come up with supporting a whole new sustainable technology cluster, economic cluster, or redesign whole areas of the city to have the jobs where the people are living in a way that they can get around that isn't dependent on fossil fuel and all the inputs that we've had in the past. So it's this process of packaging all the elements together. And then maybe after we've done some of that, we would ask different kinds of questions as we evaluate the results. Like, let's say, if we created jobs, well, were they living wage jobs? Was that housing affordable for the people who need housing? And have we provided for what's called healthy infrastructure, for a way of for people to live in a healthy lifestyles, so that there are sidewalks, for example, for people to move around on, or trails, an ability to get outside. Well, to wrap up, I think that there are some pretty important things for a community to consider when wanting to tackle these issues. And I think one of the important things is to recognize that a shift in work plans must occur. I can't tell you how many times I've seen people make climate commitments or other speeches around going green, but then nothing is done to shift any budgets or anybody's scope of work. Nobody's put to work on any of it, and things just stay the same. So that's the thing that you have to insist on. There has to be a shift in work plans and what people are doing, especially at the municipal level. And I think we have to have commitment to systems thinking, especially by the leaders of these initiatives. And since nobody's going to be able to do this alone, a willingness to partner. It's too complex to figure out alone. Our American society tends to teach us to want to compete and to be very individualistic in our endeavors. And I have colleagues who have a tendency to go off and make the brilliant plan all by themselves over in the corner and then come back with it and then be like, maybe not everybody, maybe they missed a few things. So from the beginning, partnering up is critical. And I also think that this is requiring a new kind of leader. Traditional leadership traits are still very much needed and valuable. But because this is so big, so complex, we need a lot of people to be engaged. And this definition is basically saying anybody who's willing to come and be in this collaborative effort is a sustainability leader. I said that I felt like some different traits are going to be needed. I think that perhaps one of the most important skills needed for this work of redesigning how we work and live is the ability to engage others in the kind of deeper dialogue that's needed in order for people to remember what is most important to them, so that they can have the inner motivation to participate in the changes that we need to go through. We have to inspire people and touch people in a deep way. But as I said, we also need to be system thinkers. We need to be able to understand, have people paying attention to the relationships in the system, watching out for those feedback loops, asking what's going to happen next as we try to redesign things, because it's going to be real easy to make mistakes. We have a tendency to always be pursuing the optimization and high efficiencies. That's our mindset, but that actually can maybe endanger us even further, because that reduces diversity and resilience. So we have a lot to learn about this process together. I also think that it's important when you're being part of a group, leading from within a group, that you want to set some goals together. You want to be accountable to each other, but it's also important that we learn to be flexible, because this is a very dynamic process. This is an adaptive process, and so we have to let go of some of our rigidities that some of us might be used to having things being done a certain way. Lastly, I think that sustainability leadership might require a little bit of a different mindset in terms of the rewards to the ego. In our society, if you want your ideas about sustainability to go viral and to spread quickly, you probably will have to be a little de-identified with them. You have to let them go and let them spread. It's, kind of hard. You can't be putting a copyright and a trademark on every single thing, which is our tendency as well. I also think that this work is about shifting community norms as fast as possible. So that means that we need to find a way to make the beliefs and the attitudes and the behaviors of living more sustainable really sticky. I don't know if you've heard that term before. I think Malcolm Gladwell uses it, of ideas that just, with very little effort, seem to get embedded in society. And that's how you get a new normal, is when you have tried to figure out how to be sticky and spread quickly. So those are part of the set of challenges that we face for moving quickly. Anyway, we want all of you to be engaged in this process. It's not something that just the baby boomers can take care of. We need young people engaged, but it's also not something that we can just leave to generations X and Y and whoever's after that. We have a tendency to do that, and this is an intergenerational challenge that is facing us. And so I would urge you to make sure that your group is recruiting broadly across income classes, across race, across age. Pull the community together as best as you can, because that's who's going to be needed at the table. So thank you for your attention. The resource question is a good one. It's important. We're just a little group of 8 people and no full-time employees. So we've had to just raise money. Thankfully, we have a local foundation that's created a Sustainable Ithaca Fund. And that, I know, is incredibly unique. And we're so lucky to have that. And then there's sponsorship dollars when you put on an event. But I completely agree with you that we need to have state and federal funding sources be able to be tapped by the nonprofit sector, and some of the leaders across the state, because a lot of this funnels through pre-established agencies, and there's no way to be an applicant. I am working in the Corning area with a group called the Green Initiative of the Southern Tier and Pipeline for Progress, and I've been proposing to them that we go for one of those big energy efficiency and conservation block grants and try to see if we can use some of those funds to create more of this collaborative structure and engagement process that creates more of a community conversation around sustainability. And because you can change out the traffic lights to LEDs and put in high performance equipment, but if you've not talked with anybody, you really aren't changing the culture. And we do need funds for that. We need to figure this out and somehow tell the story in a compelling enough way, maybe, that we can help policymakers understand the processes of change, and the value of doing some systems work. What I would really love to be doing if I had time and money is trying to put together a curriculum on systems thinking for lay professionals, like for elected officials, or the medical profession, sector by sector. Because I think if people had some of those tools, they might be able to problem solve better together. But I haven't even had time to go and find out if there are very many of those tools out there. I've sort of taken a look, but another methodology is simply scenarios of helping, bringing people together, make them create the scenarios of the future, which forces them to think about sort of worst case and trajectories and thresholds and outcomes, and then maybe that, in the course of doing that, you learn together and you create community together. And if you're all involved in creating the story, maybe there's a way of also helping people get past some of their boundary issues and their turf issues that keeps us from doing the kind of systems problem solving that we need to do.
It was interesting to me. I chair the Energy Advisory Board for Broome County, and we have a representative from NYSERDA, the New York State Energy Research Authority, who is actually one of the key players in delivering and distributing a lot of this money. And of course, we invited them to this conference, and one person did agree to come, but it was very interesting. They were all set, and then I mentioned the context, sustainability, and oh, we haven't really thought about that yet. And so here we are, an example of this silo thinking that really needs to be changed.
I used to, the person that is coming, he actually works for Cooperative Extension on a contract from NYSERDA, and I held half of that job. So I'm very aware of, yes, because, and that's actually typical of a lot of agencies. They've had one silo mission, and they've done it in isolation of the rest of the story. And it's hard for them to, I mean, you can go in there and nobody's recycling, for example, but we're an energy agency, you know, so that's where the leadership piece comes in at the highest levels, and you know, where the, you know, people who are appointed to lead entities like NYSERDA or DEC or whatever, maybe their marching orders need to be from the executive branch: go and learn how to transform the culture of your organization to be you know, part of the system. It's the social norming process. You see, I think a lot of it starting to spread amongst young people who are very adept and heavy users of technology. And you were mentioning how green is being co-opted, and sustainability is being co-opted. You know, here's an example. In, I think it was the University of Buffalo campus, they were trying to, Walter Simpson, I think his name was in charge of energy reductions there. And he came up with this Do It in the Dark campaign to get kids in the dorms to turn their lights off and reduce their electricity consumption. And, you know, that of course was a great little slogan for college kids, and incredibly successful campaign. And now that campaign has spread to other campuses. You know, so I guess that would be an example of something that changed the norms really quickly because it was packaged well. You know, it was sticky. She was saying that can we get curriculum into our K through 12 schools to teach systems thinking to the kids while their brains are young and malleable, since it's harder for us old folks to, you know, to get retrained. And actually, there's a systems dynamics program at Cornell, and there was this man whose name is escaping me at the moment, but he had developed a systems thinking curriculum for kids, and was teaching it to schools, but he was doing it on contract, just wherever he could find schools that were, you know, committed enough to make the investment. And that's the kind of thing that, you know, I don't know where in the educational system, the Department of Education, can you get them to make the investment so that it gets spread into more areas than just a few. In fact, he was flying down to Brazil a lot to do that teaching. We've been a co-sponsor of some of the public forums that are going on, but the leadership is being provided by a group called Shale Shock, who have been organizing these public forums with scientists and lawyers and different parts of the story. These things have been incredibly well attended, and people are organizing, it seems like, across the entire, all of Appalachia, everywhere where the Marcellus Shale is, because we understand this is a system transforming thing coming at us. What I'm concerned about is, I've gone to several of these and we've co-sponsored them. I don't hear anybody talking about the demand side of the equation for natural gas. We need to be helping with that piece of it. And that of course is extremely challenging because it's an international market in natural gas. It's not only used to heat a lot of people's homes, but it's used to make fertilizer. So how do we decrease the demand for natural gas as a piece of it, and how do we get across to all those buyers of natural gas that this is not clean energy the way natural gas is normally presented to us, but very dirty natural gas. We've got to get that message across. But I think we are really in for a big, big battle because of the demand side of the equation. Well, that's a new term. I haven't heard sustainable justice before, but social justice is at the heart of what a lot of people want to see around sustainability, but it's really one of the first things that tends to fall off the table. You know, when entities like universities decide they're going to be more sustainable, the focus tends to be on environmental impacts and reducing energy, reducing carbon emissions, that kind of thing. So the area where there's maybe the richest discussion is in the green jobs arena, thanks to the leadership of the Apollo Alliance and Van Jones of Green for All. They've really driven it into the consciousness of a lot of people that this opportunity to green the economy and shift in a new direction needs to be done thoughtfully so that everyone gets a chance to participate in these new jobs and these new opportunities, these new careers. And so I know we're sitting down with our youth advocacy program, which works with at-risk youth, and trying to find ways to make sure that ex-offenders have an opportunity to get into some of these weatherization training jobs, so that there's a deliberate effort to improve people's opportunities to participate. Rather than our tendency, I mean, it'd be real easy. There's a lot of skilled workforce folks that have been laid off from manufacturing jobs that wouldn't require very much training to turn them into, HVAC installers, building science experts, wind and solar installers. But we really need to make that effort to reach people who haven't had an opportunity while we're creating these new arenas of economic activity. And it's when you just working with low-income people in general, there's a lot to be learned from people who have had to make ends meet on a tight budget for a long time. There's some sustainability lessons in there for the middle class and upper middle class that has forgotten how to do things for themselves. So in a way, there are these opportunities for respectful dialogue as well. So it's a big topic area that we have to at least try to open ourselves and make a commitment to engage in those conversations, and not just be used to our own little patterns and our own little groups.